This is the Amy Edwards Show, and we're here to make life the best it can be at every age. Let's do this.
The biggest magic that I have done is magic that's been involved around boundaries, learning how to, so to speak, cast the spell to keep the people in my life that are healthy for me and release the people that no longer serve me, to keep the situations in my life that are healthy for me and release the ones that are no longer serving me. I mean, releasing alcohol was a big catalyst for that, but that didn't mean that once that was released that I was good. I had to, I let a partner go that I was with at the time that was horribly difficult. I had to go no contact with my parents for an extended period of time, and I still haven't re-engaged the relationship with my father, but my mother and I are now like so much better and healthier for each other now. So this magic of boundaries, I know it sounds so crazy to say that, but we often think of, I was professional psychic for like doing the circuit for a while. So the big three that people explore, both in psychic readings and in magic, right? Love and relationships, money and career, and health, right? And so what I'm saying is not a spell as it's related to anything in love and relationships, so to speak, or money, like bringing something into my life, but it's allowing me to now start to create the space to bring in anything that I do really want. Because, if I was in poor relationships or continuing to struggle under the shame and guilt that relationships can inflict, or the control, the codependency tendencies that relationships can do, there's no way that I would be able to look around and say that I'm enjoying life or in love with life.
Hello, and welcome to the show. Yeah, I am so excited. We are talking to a sober witch today, and I identify with that so full-chestedly, and I mean that in the best way. That came out kind of weird, but I really do. So please join me today because we are welcoming Sunshine Witchski. She is the pink-haired psychic medium, high priestess, Reiki master, and sober witch. Sunshine is a sobriety coach, spiritual teacher, and the creator of Sober Witch Life, a platform supporting witches in recovery to reclaim their magic, and that's magic with a K, of course, align with purpose, and build an abundant life that's rooted in sobriety. She's also the founder of the Sovereign Phoenix, which is a guide within Illuminate Unschool, where she blends spiritual practice, community building, and recovery work outside of traditional models. Known as the pink-haired sober witch, Sunshine offers an alternative path to sobriety that centers ritual, personal sovereignty, and collective support, helping witches in recovery rediscover their magic, align with their highest purpose, and live the abundant life that's promised in sobriety. I am so excited. Sunshine, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today and share.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So excited. Yeah. You know what? Let's start at the top, I think, because I'm very curious how you define a witch. And I am also curious, did you identify as a witch before you got sober? And then what did sobriety bring to you in that regard?
Yeah, I love that. These are some really good questions to start with.
Yay.
How do I define a witch? And I think there's a good portion of individuals that would agree with me on this. There's some that may, think otherwise. But I look at as a witch as kind of three pillars. The first one is an individual that believes in and practices these psychic arts, right? Divination, tarot cards, oracle, pendulum, talking to spirit, all that kind of lovely stuff. The second one is the belief in the practice of magic and ritual, right? And so magic, we can talk about spells. We can also talk about just the act of the work of shadow work is a magical transformation, alchemical transformation, even prayer. Prayer is a magical act. And the third pillar, I truly believe that as witches, we are here to be of service to the world. Right? That we're here to be of service. And it can be as simple as a mother or a father or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle that is just raising like awesome little human beings. Right? That's a service to the world. And so thank you for all of those folks that do that. Or as grand as starting a nonprofit to help witches in recovery have a safe place to be able to transform their lives, right?
Yeah.
All of
I
these
bet a
are
lot of
certain.
people, I bet a lot of people hear that though, and then they go like, that's me, like I do all those things. And it didn't occur to them, or they've just been conditioned, right? Because I know it took a long time for me to accept it for myself and go like, yeah, I am. I'm totally into this. And I identify as this because of my, churchy upbringing.
Yeah. No, that is part of the reason that I take the name is to try to destigmatize it,
I
to
love that.
try to have these conversations and
Yeah.
to share that no, it's not the Wicked Witch of the West. It's not this, it's not this evil practice. We're not devil, worshipers or satanic. Like, I have no problem with, the Satanists in the world. You really
Me
don't when
either.
you start to learn about them.
No.
But it's not this dark, evil, oppressive thing. Like it's the absolute opposite of it in reality, right? And not to go on a whole history of the practice, but you asked the other question, what was my relationship with, my witch side or witchcraft before I stepped into recovery? And so I've identified as a witch since I was around 16 years old. I've always been the black sheep of the family. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 13 years of my life. But the reality is, it was around 11 years old when I asked our parish priest if I could be an altar girl, and he told me no, that I said, there's something weird here. Like, why can I not honor, right? Why can I not participate in a way that I believe is honoring my faith, right? Somebody's telling me no. And so I started to ask a lot of questions. I started to piss off a lot of my religious teachers because I didn't want to accept the surface value answers that anyone
Mm-mm.
provided,
Mm-mm.
right? I was a seeker. I've always sought knowledge. And so I was around 16 years old when I walked into my very first metaphysical store, and I finally felt as though I'd found a place that was not going to chastise me for asking questions and where I might find some answers. And so, yeah, some of the first books that I bought in that metaphysical store were books on witchcraft, were books on the chakras, and I think what was the other one? I mean, crystals and all of the other kind of stuff. But ever since I was 16, it was kind of a joke in my family, like, oh, Sunshine, is a witch, and everybody would kinda giggle and laugh about it, but yeah.
Oh, thank
So
God. I was gonna say, like, if you were going to Catholic school, I'm curious how your
I
family handled.
you know, I feel I've had so many conversations with those that were oppressed and ostracized out of their family. I realize how grateful and blessed I am that I was
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Right, very grateful and blessed, but, my mom's side of the family, my grandmother, she talked to angels, so she was a medium herself, even though she
Mhm.
was a devout Catholic, so there was some acceptance in
Yeah.
this practice.
I mean, Catholicism it can be kinda witchy, like, they do a lot of.
Not kind of, no way, there's, like, no kind of, right? We literally have initiatory sacraments, right, to take you through like, it is I mean, I look back now, it's like, you were basically training me as a witch since I was born, right? You raised me in Catholicism and said, "Here's how you practice magic and ritual," like,
Right.
yeah, not kind of, very much so, very, very much so,
Well, tell me about your sober path and how these started to like, what happened in your practice, really?
yeah, so up until I stepped into recovery, I practiced what I would say like reactive magic. So if I needed something, I would do magic, right? Imagine any of the
Yeah.
person that's religious when they need it type stuff,
Yeah.
they tap into spirit. Yeah. So it wasn't until I stepped into recovery and I originally started in a 12-step program, and I remember being 90 days in and, like, looking around and going, "How in the world are these people, like, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? Like, what do they have in common?" And the thing that I realized is every single one of those people had a strong spiritual faith and practice.
Mhm.
And so I had to take a step back and say, "What is that for me? What is
Yeah.
mine? Like, how am I gonna go to church every week?" Right? How am I going to engage? And so it became very clear. Like the moment I stopped drink, I shouldn't even say like just drinking. Like the moment I stopped poisoning, because I don't even want to say just drinking, poisoning my body through alcohol, right? Because alcohol is a poison.
Uh-huh.
Spirit had started to already talk to me, right? I remember sitting at a 12-step table and seeing my grandfather show up, right? Who's passed and on the other side, who sat
Wow.
there with me at a table and told me, "Do you know this is how I met your grandmother? Was through a 12th step." And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
Right? Like, and all of this like inspiration, And so I took a really deep look and I said, "You know what? I created my way of like diving into my spiritual faith at that time was I pulled out my tarot cards that I hadn't been using on a regular basis and I started pulling cards for myself every single day. And I said, this isn't enough. What do I need to do? And so then I fired up a Facebook page and I started going live once a week and offering readings for folks. And I said, you know what? This isn't enough, right? I need more. And so I embarked on a 12-week study of revisiting all of the research and study that I'd ever done on the chakras. I pulled out everything that I'd ever had again and starting to research all of that. How do I heal these? How are they? And so that
Well,
was it. Like,
it's like reactive to proactive, really. Like you really stepped into just full spirituality from a place of like, okay, let's do this all the time. Like
I
I
I
guess.
wanted to figure out a way to make it, like, to ingrain it in my everyday.
Yeah.
Right? If I was going to remain sober, if I was going to continue down this path of recovery, incorporating my spiritual beliefs and faiths no longer was a uh, option. It was a requirement. So I figured out how to do that.
How long ago was that?
I celebrated 6 years in recovery this past October. Yeah.
Congratulations. Amazing.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
and when did you start? I guess, when those things coincide, it's hard to discern exactly what makes it take off, right? Is it the sobriety or is it really diving into your spiritual practice in a really aligned and dedicated way? But you probably wouldn't have done that without the sobriety, without needing it. But I know in my own sober journey, I'm 3.5. I'm looking almost to 4 years in April. And so, yeah. But it took me detoxifying, really getting the poison out of my body, to use your words. But really, like I had drank for so many years and I was 48 or 49, 50 when I stopped. And so I I really feel like it had to get out of my system, and it took a good solid 3 years for me to or no, 2 years for my, like, powers manifestation to feel like they had come back online. And I wonder,
Mhm.
did you feel any of that? Did you sense any of that?
Little bits and pieces. So it's really fascinating to me because it's like I hit my 6 years back in October, and every year, like, I go through this, like, it's right and my birthday and my sober birthday and my belly button birthday are, like, 5 days apart, right? Or 4
Oh,
days apart,
what's
right?
the
Like,
date? What are they?
October 5th, I hit my rock bottom. October 9th I was done. I stepped into
Wow.
my new life. And so
Wow.
it's this deeply reflective time and so this past year, I finally was like going, I've actually been in recovery since I left my ex-husband. Like, I've actually been in recovery since I separated from him in 2015, right?
Mhm.
And so but I was recovering at that point from an abusive marriage. And then 2 years after that, I left a toxic job, so I was recovering from a toxic job. So spirit started to speak to me earlier than I had ever realized. Spirit had started to unsettle itself in me and say, "Something isn't right. You're not living aligned. And if you don't start to take actions now, there are things that you are not going to be able to experience in this life that you desire." And so I all of that went, I'll say, kind of slow. It was not until I gave up the alcohol that the skyrocket happened, right?
Yeah.
That, like, I became, I may have had some side conversations with spirit in that process between 2015 and 2019.
Mhm.
Uh, but the moment the alcohol stopped, spirit spoke to me incredibly loud. Like, I mean, I realized at that point that I had spent a lot of those years drinking and drugging, numbing the overwhelm of being a highly sensitive individual. And so all of the like manifestation or any of that kind of stuff, I would say if it, I mean, I'll answer it this way. If I had not listened to spirit and went heavy into that whole healing my chakras, I think it would have taken me a lot longer. But it was about a year out when I went and did that reflection for that first year and said, "How in the did I just go 365 days without a drink? What in the world?" It wasn't until that point that I realized, like, life was dramatically different for me.
What was different?
Oh, I what was different? It's hard to even look back at it now because when I think of then even versus now, things have drastically changed. But the
Right.
things that were different was what was I willing to tolerate and put up with?
I feel
Was
like
I
yeah, it's like the drama. I feel like it's just like the
Yeah.
drama of life just kind of fades away and everything is just more even and my moods are better. Does that
Yeah.
kind of,
Yes. What
yeah.
what was I willing to what was I willing to put up with? Who was I willing to have around me?
Wow.
What was my relationship with fear, right? How was I responding when it came to feelings of, shame and guilt? So my first year, like when I started in all of that chakra work, I started to address, the lower chakras, the root chakras all around fear, the sacral. We have a lot of shame that exists in the sacral chakra and guilt exists in the solar plexus. So that whole first year was a lot of work around all of the repair of those things, changing my relationship with fear, changing and understanding that I didn't own the shame, like that was often a projection of somebody else on me when I was experiencing
Yeah.
shame. And from a guilt perspective, that was like realizing that I had been so conditioned throughout my life to not enjoy it, to like not enjoy life.
Catholicism, I mean, for
Yeah.
sure, so
Yeah.
guilt focused. And it's really interesting that you mentioned that particular chakra because that was the one that I completely ignored. And I remember having an awakening one day and being like, I don't even care about this chakra. It's like I've just blown it off. And I didn't even know it was associated with guilt. That's fascinating.
We hold all of our ego stories there. And so, I always picture this as in, the shame is all of the projection of the other individuals. And then the solar plexus holds all of those ego stories that come in our own voices,
Hmm.
right? They may have been planted by somebody else, but it's like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of this. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done this. You should have done this. You should have done this. And so it becomes, yeah, this just like this guilt and until you start, I have this quote that every now and again I wrote up many moons ago in that year, but it'll pop up on my Facebook once a year. And it's like, if you are always living your life based upon how other people tell you you should, then whose life are you truly living?
Truth.
Yeah.
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 Let's talk about 12-step programs. I live with somebody who is in recovery as well, and he goes to AA and isn't as involved in the 12 steps, but they're part of my life, I guess is my point. For me, it's not been as big a part because I was more choosing sobriety. I wasn't in, I don't know, the addiction that some people are. And for me, it's just been the first three, really. The first three steps. I can't, God can, I'll let God. I prefer a genderless God. And so as I'm sure you can understand. And so those are the three that really resonate with me. And that's kind of all that that's my go-to spot for just
Mhm.
like that cycle of, oh God, I'm holding on. Can I let go and relax? So I'm wondering, how you have rethought the 12-step program and the 12-step model, I guess, and what that looks like when it's not traditional in the AA sense.
I have it written up where I actually will compare all of the steps and how I've kind of rewritten them. And the first three are not so drastically different. Like the first one, and I've gotten into some arguments with folks about this powerless concept, but the truth and the reality is when we think that we can control all the world, then we believe that we have, power over our addiction, our drinking, our this, or that, right? So I do believe there is this still, and I talk about this need of accepting the powerless to initiate the change, right? There's this need to have this acceptance of to initiate the change. Otherwise, we don't ever step into a place of needing change, right? So that's in the piece. The second one is still pretty the same. Believe that there is something outside. There is something that you get to call upon, right? And it doesn't need to be defined. It's like in the 12-step programs, they say it could be like a rock. And it's like, no, spirit exists, right? As a witch, like we believe that spirit exists. We believe in the 5 elements, and one of those elements is spirit, right? So believe and understand that they are there, in order to help provide guidance. But the third step is the use of the psychic gifts, the use of the psychic arts to be able to connect, right? And through doing that, but when we actually engage in these gifts and the relation with the divine, in essence, it's at that point that the surrender comes. So they're very similar, right? Very similar. They're not going to share. We get a lot more different as we get further down, but I don't disagree in those first 3, right? I do believe that we have to accept that there's a change that's needed, that there is something we have to find belief outside of ourselves. Like we don't have all the answers. I've said this before, Amy. If I had if I could do it all, if I knew how to make all the right decisions, I would never have found myself at a rock bottom. I wouldn't have found myself suffering from addiction. I wouldn't have, none of that would have happened. I needed to trust that something else could guide me, as they say, to, a place of sanity, so to speak. I had to trust in that, right? Because the reality is I'd been trying to operate and navigate my life by myself as this independent, strong, bullheaded woman for 40 years. And I saw where it got me, right? I saw where it got me, and it wasn't pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people maybe that do identify as witches or in the spiritual path, letting go of control is such a hard one, right? And especially if you're talking about spells or manifestation or things like that, and really finding that balance of letting go and surrendering to maybe I don't know what's best. Maybe I don't know the answer. Maybe something this or something better, right? And I'm curious how you feel about that. And then also the changes that you see or the differences between traditional 12 steps and what you've done.
Yeah, the surrender piece. I mean, witches, absolutely. Anybody practicing manifestation, the power of law of attraction, anybody. I think a lot of folks, again, we go back down to that ego and that solar plexus chakra of thinking we know how everything needs to be. Like our ego is there to protect us. That is what it's meant to do. So it tries to keep us very safe, and it tries to keep us very predictable, and it tries to tell us exactly, kind of what we should be doing again. So the surrender becomes really hard. And I've talked and worked with so many people on this one of, we as human beings, we're also, when we're coming out of this path of addiction and recovery, our minds in and of themselves of what we could expect will often underestimate what the universe could potentially deliver to us too. So
For
we
sure.
go ahead and
For sure.
so we, and the timing piece too. Like we also try to this goes back to the control. We try to control it all. I want to say what I want, how I want it, right? When it happens, who's involved, how it affects me, how I emotionally respond. Am I not just right back into the whole patterns of addiction there? Right?
Right.
So a lot of learning how to recover and to surrender and to let go, it becomes this, again, that third step is this trusting that the divine is going to have you, right? And when you can really reach that place, right? And don't get me wrong, I am not perfect. There are still times that I'll find myself right back with that finger count. You
It's a
know,
practice. It's a
I'm
practice.
a human.
Yes.
Um, not enough sleep, too much caffeine. There I am, Um, but yeah, there's this beautiful like release. Like I can literally feel it in my body the moment I just say, you know what, I'm done trying to control this. Like I have, you know, in the 12-step program, one of the things that I probably appreciate the most about it is that it introduced me the concept of the third step prayer, right? If you've ever heard of this, like
What is it?
so they say that at that moment that you go ahead and you kind of create this relationship and connection that you they advise to create a third step prayer, right?
Oh,
That connects you.
okay.
And so I pretty much since probably I don't know, day 60 or I've said almost the exact same prayer or evolved this prayer. And what I say, I thank the gods, the goddesses, my angels, the ancestors for surrounding me, guiding me, protecting me, and taking me down a path in life that leads me to a better life. I ask that they continue to surround me, guide me, protect me, and take me down a path in life that leads me to more peace, love, happiness, hope, joy, prosperity. Allow me to remain in the passenger seat, let go of all control so that I can just sit back and enjoy life. Because the moment you learn how to surrender, you get to enjoy it now, right? You get to enjoy it. You're no longer like, I picture in my head the mom, right? That's got to plan the whole family vacation, right? Everything that's got to go, all the meals, all of this. And then she gets back and she's like, I need a vacation from my vacation, right?
Right.
And so I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm going to say, hey, spirit, you handle all this. Hey, divine, hey, God, hey, goddess, you handle all this. I'm just here to enjoy it. I'm just here to have a good time, right? That's
So
it.
powerful. It's so powerful. I love your prayer. I love your prayer. Is that written out on your website? I need to make sure and share that. That's so good.
I know I've
I want
got
to
it
print it
in
out.
a handful. Yeah, I've got it in a handful full of places. So, I do have it somewhere. I'd have to look at it and send it to you, and I will do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it can be really, really hard to do to surrender, but it's a beautiful practice to learn. Um, it's very beautiful to learn. And so I think the next thing was asking about some of the other steps too that you'd asked,
Yes,
right?
yes. I'm curious about
Yeah.
the progression and the steps and the differences because my partner, he's very witchy. And he started a nonprofit, everything. When you said that, I was like, oh, he but he hasn't abided by these, some people are just so hardcore with the
Oh,
steps
I
in
know. I
AA.
know.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's not
No,
been
there's a lot of people, and that was for me. So I attempted, I tried, right? I said, hey, spirit, I said I was going to do this recovery thing, and I'm going to give this a shot. Even though I've got the like rebel in me, the rebel is just. I gave it a shot, and you got a sponsor, started working the steps, but after I had a whole year in that 365-day reflection, I said, what really got me here? And I looked at all the steps and I said, I didn't do them the way that they told me. I did them the way that fit in the line. So, like step 4, which is normally create a moral inventory. For us, it's engage in shadow work, right?
I
It's
like
start
that.
going through the
Yeah.
shadows. So, like right now, you know, uh, I've got leading a group of folks through 90 days in shadow work, and we're actually going through the fear, the guilt, the shame, and the self-loathing. We're going to go through in 90 days all of these kind of like patterns, all the prompts, all the exploring what it means. Like, how are these showing up in our life? How are they impacting us, right?
Mhm.
So that we could begin to bring them into the light and shift the perspective of them. 5, they normally say in the traditional, they say you need to tell your moral inventory to someone else, right? You got to find a person,
That's
and
right.
I'm like, and so for us, it's no, you need to like release these things with community. It's not one other person. Like find community that you can connect with because one person could be having a shitty day and not be able to hear you. Right? Not be able to provide you the level of like support that you need. So find a community, release the burden of carrying these shadows alone, right? Accept, acknowledge the fact that as human beings, None of us are perfect, right? None of us have this figured out. No. Um, we then get into step 6, which is to invoke magic, to start to do your magical practice. Like, look at ritual and how it can serve you. 7 is craft the rituals. Craft your daily ritual, right? So for me, every single morning, I say my prayer, I pull my cards, I do a journal reflection. What was the last day like? How did I treat my mind? How did I treat my body? How did I treat my spirit? How did I show up? Right? These are my daily rituals, right? 8, we get into this. I do believe there is, that there is a lot of healing in making amends, but the thing that I realized in my recovery, as well as talking to a lot of folks, is that the pressure around this needing to like make amends with folks is where a lot of people will fall off. And my exploration, I remember talking with my therapist with this a lot, and this is why I changed the way that we approach this in the 13 steps. But they say in the traditional 12 steps that you should make amends as long as it's not going to hurt someone. How are you to make that determination?
Yeah, good point.
How
Right? We
how
don't
are you
know.
how
We don't know.
yeah, how are you to make that determination? How do you know where that person's at in their life?
Yeah.
How healed yeah. So, like, isn't this awfully selfish?
Yeah.
Isn't it selfish? So
And
we make
yeah,
yeah,
there's
go
almost
ahead.
an element of control in there or thinking like
Yeah.
where yeah, instead of releasing that.
So we make the list, and then we move into spell work for them.
I love that, which is like prayer, right? I mean,
It
I'm
is.
curious too how you define spell work because I think that a lot of people think about that as having a control aspect to it or a specific desire as in we know best.
You know, um, Spell work and ritual can be used interchanged in a lot of ways. A lot of times when I've talked with people about spell work, um, it leans towards like a recipe. That's the easiest way to describe it. I've got a candle, I've got some herbs, I'm going to say a prayer, and I'm going to, release the intentions. And ritual, I look at is that, but it's often something that we do on a regular basis. Like it's very, kind of structured. And so spell work to me in this regards can be as simple as prayer. So I have, that third step prayer then goes into, uh, I ask, one of the next things is I ask for protection for all of the individuals that I love, all my friends, all my family, everybody within the recovery space and the witchcraft community, protect them from anything that will bring them harm, any low vibrational energies, entities, anything that will deter them from or keep them from their highest vibrational path, right? That spell work to help. And so it's if you've found someone specifically, and this is what, some of what I've done, where there have been people in my past that I may have hurt. If the time presented itself, like I had a partner at the time, and I did apologize to him for things, right? That was okay. Like I was in relation with him already, but I thought about it. Like there are some people that I did some pretty shitty stuff to in my early 20s. And I don't know where they're at in their life. I'm not gonna knock on their door and, expect them to accept an amends from me, um,
Yeah, I've heard you can
especially
do it like just through prayer, really. I don't know who told me that, but it was like advising that maybe it was my husband actually, and he was talking about, if you can't do that or you don't know how it's going to be taken or whatever, you can just hold them in your heart, which I think is very powerful too, right? Just having a heart meditation on that person.
Yep. And so that is not necessarily how it is shared in all 12-step
Yeah,
programs,
yeah. No, it's
right?
not at
So
all. It's very different.
yeah.
Right, right.
So I agree with that. It can be as
Yeah.
simple as prayer. And then we go, very similar, continuing to do shadow work, working with our guides on a regular basis to provide us, the direction and the clarity, celebrating and supporting other people. Like, we do a recovery circle twice a week, and I always open it up with celebrations. right? Like celebrate where you've come from, celebrate the things that you've accomplished. And the last but not least, not everybody has heard of this if you've not been in a 12-step program. But when I sat in these rooms and heard that they had a 13th step and found out what they refer to it as,
Yeah.
I was horrified.
That's horrifying. If
I was
you might as well
horrified.
tell people if they don't know, because there's probably people listening.
So it's a concept of a predatory step. So it's said jokingly that an old timer will be 13th stepping a newcomer, meaning that they're preying on the fact that this newcomer is vulnerable. Very often it's done as a man preying on a younger woman, but you'll hear it regardless. Right? You'll
Yeah.
hear it with a man trying to think he's gonna whip the new boy into shape, and this predatory nature, and I was horrified. Right, the number 13 is so symbolic of the goddess, the divine feminine. Right, we have 13 moons throughout the
Yeah.
year, and so when I sat down and finally spirit came and they said you have to do something about that. The 13th step in the witch's 13 steps to recovery is to do ritual to help heal the world from addiction.
Love that. Good for
Yeah.
you. You know what? It's never even occurred to me to change that. And way to go. I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what does that look like?
Well, for me, on a daily basis, I said that that third step prayer is evolved. So at the very end, not only in my daily prayers, but the end of each and every one of our recovery circles, in a very simplistic way, we pray that all individuals that are out there that are still suffering from addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, chaos, violence, drama, shopping, food, sugar, or whatever is robbing someone from living their best possible life, we pray they find the courage that they need to take the steps towards a life filled with more peace, love, happiness, hope, joy, and prosperity. And we pray they continue to find that courage every single day. And for me, I have a list of individuals now that have crossed my path over the course of the last 6 or 7 years that I literally name in my own personal prayer. Right?
Wow.
But the other bigger piece is around each of the pagan holidays. So this next one coming up for Imbolc, we gather in community. I've partnered with 2 recovery community organizations here in the Metro Detroit area. And so I alternate at their location every other holiday. So we're at one here about 15 minutes from my house, and we gather in ritual with the community. So they come in. I have a full formal ritual that I've created where I open space. We talk about the season. We talk about what it means for us to heal. We do ritual in and of itself for our own individual healings with the intention that as we are doing our own work, it is rippled out into our friends and our family and our community, right? And so I'm really excited. We'll be doing here in March, we'll be down in New Orleans.
I saw that. Tell me about
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, March 20th is Ostera. It's the start of spring. It's the pagan holiday the spring equinox. And so we will be down in New Orleans. I have opened the call up for anyone. So we'll be handfuls of witches throughout the U.S. that are joining us. And we will be crafting the ritual while we're there as part of the retreat.
Nice.
And so we'll be, writing what it means, writing the invocation, what do we do as part of it, and then ideally performing it, whether, fingers crossed. I've been to New Orleans a couple of times and the weather's been good, but I've also been there and it's been torrential downpours. But we'll hopefully be performing it in public in one of the parks and inviting the community to join us. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I see, and I think I saw on your Instagram you were mentioning that it's not a place you think of sobriety, really. So, yeah.
Man,
But I've stayed
yeah,
sober in New Orleans, so yeah.
I posted in I've been going to New Orleans personally for, I don't know, the last 5 years. And I posted in one of the New Orleans Facebook groups recently and said, hey, I'm bringing a group of sober folks down. Does anybody have any place that they'd recommend that they really love, that would support this? most people very lovely and wonderful, but there was like probably 5 or 6 folks that were like, I don't know why you do anything sober in New Orleans. Right? And I was like, ooh, I was like, did you want to come to retreat? It's like, sounds like you might, wow.
Sounds like
I
you
just
might
was
be in it.
floored. Yeah, I was floored because I've only been there since I've been in recovery. I've never gone, while I was still drinking. And the culture, the history, um, is just so beautiful, so
Yeah.
unbelievably beautiful. So yeah, I'm really excited for it. We ideally are making this a yearly retreat. We'll do this down in New Orleans each spring.
Awesome.
It'll shift depending upon when Mardi Gras falls because we don't want it during that time because it can get kind of crazy and
Yeah.
pricey. But yeah.
That's really cool. I'm so excited for you. And that's very beautiful that you're creating your own rituals there. And I'm curious when you talk about rituals, how does discipline fit in with this? Because do you have to have more of a disciplined approach once you're in sobriety? Do you feel like maybe you're some witches that you encounter or people practicing maybe don't have that discipline and then maybe sobriety brings that? I don't know. I'm just kind of like feeling around in that area.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And it reminds me of something I was talking about earlier this week with some of the folks in my coven of, there's so many of us in recovery that are also we're recovering like people pleasers, recovering perfectionists, right? And so I believe once again, when we go into that turning it over to spirit or to the divine, however it is that you need to be showing up, whatever level of discipline, whatever level of, being present you need to be, you will be led to be there. Right? And
Yeah.
so for some people, discipline will be important because maybe that's something that they need, right? And so spirit is aligning them to have structure and order, right? Saturn becomes very present and says, here, this is how we do things. And for other folks, like I state I'm a recovering alcoholic, workaholic, perfectionist, and control freak. That's how I've always introduced myself, right? And so for me, I've had to learn that I over-discipline, that I will get too rigid, right? There have been times as we've been doing these public rituals where I'll realize, it's supposed to start at 7 and it's 7:20 and nobody's arrived yet. And you know, I'm going through this control freak of me is going like, everyone's exactly where they need to be right now,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Whoever shows up is exactly who's supposed to be here. Like, come on now, be kind to yourself. Find grace for yourself. Like, I don't want to live in a life of pressure and, having to, do everything as in this
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
discipline will show up in the way that it needs to. And for some folks that step into recovery and their sobriety, yes, they will be guided to put more discipline into their life. For those of us that are on the opposite end of the spectrum that have used more control and discipline as part of our addictive behaviors, we will be asked to provide, to show up with more grace, compassion, and softness. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well said. Really, truly. I think that we forget that so easily. Like, I know I do because I have a lot of these perfectionist tendencies, I hold myself to some weird made up standard, all these things. So that has shown up for me exactly what you said. I'll get too rigid on myself and too rigid. And I did that for a long time. And now I'm so much looser and so much happier when I let go of all those things. So, yeah, thank you. That's so great to hear. How do, you were mentioning all these things that you'll say to yourself, like you were just saying, oh no, you know what? They're exactly where they need to be. All those things. Like for me, I have to get those on repeat in my head. Mantras are a big part of my life and sticky notes with mantras and, affirmations. I think of those as spell work. Do you agree with that? Or what do you think?
The most powerful spells that we have are the words that we say.
Big time.
So,
Yes. Right.
absolutely. And so it's not just even the affirmations or the mantras, it's things like, I mean, I've done the reprogramming the entire time in recovery where, saying the shoulds are one, like I should be doing something. I'm like, oh gosh, no, 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 mm-mm, right? Because the moment I apply that, I'm introducing some concept of guilt into this.
Yeah.
Right? So words are the most powerful spell that you can, and how you talk to yourself in your head, right? How you talk to yourself in your own mind in and of itself. Like
Mhm.
often think about affirmations and mantras and stuff. And so go ahead and say them out loud. But if the moment you stop talking or repeating them out loud, you're just reiterating a bunch of, undoing in your mind, in your head.
Yeah.
You've
I saw
negated it.
I saw like a meme and it was like your first thought is your conditioning and your second thought is the truth. And I was like, "Oh, that's so that like what you just said, oh, I should." And then you catch yourself, right? That's our conditioning just yakking away like because I don't know, we were taught that and we subscribed to it somewhere along the way and we have to
It's interesting that I don't disagree, and I'll have to sit and ponder this one because when I teach psychic development, the first thought is the intuition, the second is the ego.
I get that. I get what you're saying too. Like so many times we'll ignore that first thought, right?
Mhm.
So you're right. Maybe it's sometimes, right? Maybe it's when those negative ones
Well,
pop up and it's applicable to those.
yeah,
You're
that's what
totally
I'm
right.
saying. I'll have to like give some thought to that because there's probably a lineation there. There's probably a lineation, so I'll have to give some thought as to what that is.
Yeah, there probably is, but I know what you mean. And so many times I will have that first thought. That's my intuition. And then you'll ignore that, suppress it, or it's
Mhm.
spirit talking through and you're like, no, 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 no. I have to do X, whatever it is. And that's the conditioning coming through. So I don't know. Maybe that's not true at all. Think about it and see what you think. Um, yes, for sure. What has been some magic that has really surprised you in your own life, in your sober journey and sober witch journey?
Some magic that's really surprised me. You know, a lot of the work that I do, and I share this, I've shared this, had this conversation with a lot of dear friends, is not, I'm not trying for instant manifestation. Like I want to feel and enjoy life. So a lot of the work and the magic that I do is this deeply alchemical, right? I'm doing all of this work on this inner work in order to transform the external world around me. I don't want the external world to have something manifest and then me be miserable still inside, right? The biggest work I think I have done um, has really been, and it's interesting, even as I'm asking spirit this, it's been the work around boundaries,
Mm,
right? And I know it sounds strange to say that's magic, but there is something about learning how to set healthy boundaries that starts to allow movement to happen in your life. Right? Because boundaries also come with the need to release at times, right? We set a boundary with ourselves that says, I'm no longer going to tolerate that, and therefore I have to release something, right? And so throughout my entire recovery, the biggest magic that I have done is magic that's been involved around boundaries, right? Learning how to, um, you know, so to speak, cast the spell to keep the people in my life that are healthy for me and release the people that no longer serve me,
mm,
right? To keep the situations in my life that are healthy for me and release the ones that are no longer serving me. I mean, releasing alcohol was a big catalyst for that, but that
yeah.
didn't mean that once that was released that I was good. I had to, I let a partner go that I was with at the time that was horribly difficult, horribly difficult, right? God rest him that he's on the other side
Oh,
now.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had to go no contact with my parents for an extended period of time, and I still don't haven't reengaged the relationship with my father, but my mother and I are now like so much better and healthier for each other now. So this magic of boundaries, I know it sounds so crazy to say that, but we often think of, I was professional psychic for like doing the circuit for a while. So the big three that people explore, both in psychic readings and in magic, right? Love and relationships, money and career, and health, right? And so what I'm saying is not a spell as it's related to anything in love and relationships, so to speak, or money, like bringing something into my life, but it's allowing me to now start to create the space to bring in anything that I do really want. Because if I was in poor relationships or continuing to struggle under the shame and guilt that, relationships can inflict, or the control, the codependency tendencies that relationships can do, there's no way that I would be able to look around and say that I'm enjoying life or in love with life. Yeah.
I think that makes so much sense because we think the relationship, the money, the career, whatever it is all going to be the path to happiness. But really, it's something so much deeper than that. And it really is about your boundaries, who you're surrounding yourself with, how you're living your life day to day. And that's, we just, those are all things that ripple out from taking care of our boundaries, taking care of ourselves. So I think that's a really beautiful and cool answer because a lot of people won't think about that, and it sounds to me like a very evolved answer, right? Like you've got enough experience to know like it's so much deeper than that. It's really about bigger things.
There's this beautiful learning. So when I do my own personal card pulls, I use the Thoth deck. It's a tarot card deck that was created by Aleister Crowley and this amazing artist that he worked with. And when you start doing the study of that particular deck, you can't help but learn about what the Ten of Pentacles means. And the Ten of Pentacles are all around the earthly, right? It's our earthly remain, our 3D world, right, is the Pentacles. And so the Ten of Pentacles, the word associated to it is wealth. And so often the younger version of me would have thought that wealth meant money, right? Things, objects. But what you learn is wealth has nothing to do with the actual objects that are around you, but more so the richness in the life that you've created. The relationships, the depths of the relationships, the ability to be vulnerable and in love with the people that you have. I don't mean a romantic love, but like in love. Like I'm in love with my friends. I'm in love with the people I keep close to me, right? Like this is wealth, right? To know that if I didn't have 10 cents in my pocket, it wouldn't change the fact that I'm a happy person, that I get to be in awe over, watching things grow, or, seeing a bunny hop across my path and just be delighted about it,
Yeah.
right? That's wealth. And so you start to learn what wealth truly is, I believe, in recovery. You start to, that to me is a big reason as to why I do this work, is to help other individuals identify what that really looks like for them.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Really beautiful. And so true. I feel like too, I encounter so many people that are sober curious, or like, oh, I wish I could, or what would that be like? Whatever, What do you tell people when they say that to you?
If you're thinking about it, you're on the path. You're on the path, right? The reality is every single individual's road is going to be different to that. There is no one particular way. I will tell anyone that, if you are going to start to do, like you work the 13 steps to recovery, you will find yourself at some point that alcohol probably wouldn't be a part of your life, or marijuana, or the prescription drugs, or that codependent relationship, whatever that may be, whatever's robbing you of the life that you truly deserve to be living. Right? Because it includes that shadow work. It includes, starting to do ritual. It includes starting to do magic. So maybe today isn't the day that you stop drinking, but if you engage on this path, I bet you at some point you'll let it go.
Yeah, I bet. How do you navigate unrest in your soul through politics? Like when you see the state of the world or what's going on. The thing is, it's just hitting close to home right now. Things are going on around the world all the time, right? I think I don't know. I think I read the other day that 16,000 people were killed in Iran or something like that. And my husband was like, "Oh, that's, he has a nonprofit in Africa." He was like, "Oh, that's happening every day in Congo or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, we don't hear anything about it." And so I think for me, there's a little bit of like a zoom out like perspective, like this is happening all the time and we need to pray for the world. But I'm curious, you're in Detroit, as a matter of fact, right? You're up north, you're Minnesota and everything that's been going on up there. And I'm curious well, I feel like sobriety helps you keep a more even keel. But I'm wondering how you navigate, unrest and action.
Oh, yeah. That's a multifaceted answer here. The first thing is I do have to remind myself of what my mission is,
Oh, I
right?
like that. Mhm.
So I have to remember what my mission is and what I'm here to do in the world, because if I do end up allowing myself to become too overwhelmed, that means it's taking the energy from the mission that I have at hand. Like, my mission is literally to help people that are either suffering from addiction or on their, in their path of recovery from it,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's my first kind of like layer of this, is like I have to remember that.
Yeah.
It's really important. And I've had some conversations with people that have gotten angry that I've not gotten worked up about things. And I'm like, but you're not worked up about how, bad addiction is in this world, are you? Right? Like, let's talk about the missions that we each have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's a really important thing for me to kind of anchor into that.
Mm.
The next layer of that is I will. So yes, Minneapolis, so we in Circle the last couple of times have prayed for all the folks that are kind of, impacted. I have a dear friend in Chicago, so Chicago got really hit. I'm actually floored that we have not witnessed a lot. There's bits and pieces here in the Metro Detroit area, but nothing in comparison to what I've seen in these other two Midwestern cities. And so again, just saying the prayers, and being aware and conscious, you know, it can be so easy for those of us that are sensitive, that are, even especially those in recovery, to become overwhelmed by the collective disorder of the world. And so the next layer in is, if I know my mission, if I know that I'm doing what I can from a prayer or spell work perspective, the next is to protect and to ground myself, to not allow myself to be pulled into this conscious chaos. Because the reality is if I allow myself as a person in recovery to be pulled in, that's a real quick way to give an excuse for a relapse. Well, look at the world. It's going to hell in a handbasket. Why not? Why wouldn't I drink? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't I drug?
Yeah.
Right? So that's where the protection and the grounding practices become really, really, really important.
Yeah.
Right? So that mission, do what I can from a prayer and a spell work protective. And there's I've followed a couple of witches on Facebook, some pretty well-known authors, and there's been a handful of them that are going about and sharing, like, if you do want to do the spell work and ritual to kind of help combat a lot of what's going on, it's out there. There's actually a really good book. I wish I knew the title of it, but there are a couple of witchcraft books that are being written that have been published in the last year or so that talk about what you can do as a witch in order to combat from a spell and a ritual perspective.
Mhm.
Right? So those three things: know my mission, be willing to do what I can, and know it's not my place to do it all, and then keep my grounding and my protection in place. The world is a wild and crazy place, and I don't know that we're any different today than we've ever been throughout history. It's just a different flavor of it, right? There's disorder that has
Yeah.
happened throughout the time. So know your mission. Do what you can from a spell and a prayer and a ritual perspective, and make sure that you stay grounded and protected along the way.
Great answer. Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
I really love that too, because I'll have moments of getting swept away, and r- you just saying that really is going to be a fantastic reminder for me. Like, I know what my purpose is, and it's to use my voice. And so, like, yes, like, lean back into that and do what you can, and and keep following the course, right, of your purpose.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. Thank you. Really great. Let's see. What have we missed in regards to witchcraft, like, and codependency, or spiritual bypassing or anything like that? Are there some big topics like that that we should touch on?
You know, the one thing that's coming to mind just as I'm asking is, kind of goes back full circle to when you asked me to define a witch. There's a lot of people that are out there that are being called to this path, right? That are being called to step into an alternate spiritual practice and more esoteric, to look at and embrace some of the occult and their spiritual beliefs. And it can be hard to do. It can be scary to do for number one, right? Because it's something unknown, right? So if you
Hmm.
don't know it, but it can be hard to do when you have people around you that aren't supportive. Like I said, I'm very blessed and grateful. My family, may have laughed about it, but I did not get ostracized or punished for it, right?
Right.
Um, y- and I'll just say this because this is what's coming, through from spirit. Like that's where we are very lucky to live in the world that we live in right now. That you can find Facebook groups, Reddit subreddits. You can find community. You can go look online. If you need to remain in the broom closet, so to speak, as you explore the path that you're being called to, then don't hesitate to do so. Don't feel like you have to tell anybody what it is that you're doing. Find a community and connect that can provide you the support as you navigate learning and understanding what that looks like for you, right? Um, and like I said, we are very blessed to live in the world that we do right now because I just talked on a podcast the other day and somebody asked how I'd learned about stuff. And I was like, man, when I first started learning about witchcraft, like there was no internet.
Right.
There
Yeah.
was no internet. Like I had to go like literal and you couldn't go to a library. You had to like find a metaphysical bookstore and search through what they had, right? Yeah, so we're very lucky that we have a lot of things at our disposal around us, and so from that perspective, there is it's I've seen this. You might have seen these memes lately too. That there tends to be when the world is in disarray, when politics are at war with themselves, when chaos seems to be in control. It is a time historically where more people will be called to the esoteric and occult paths.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Mm.
I've seen it a handful of times come up, and that's the reason why is because that is the way that we start to feel more balanced, empowered, and, present in the world that just has no answers. Like, it doesn't make sense
No.
around us,
Mm-mm.
right? People will lean heavily into their spirituality and their faith.
Yeah.
And the reality is some of the historically dominant religions have not been providing the answers. And it's just a cycle that happens throughout time. Like we philosophically want to wake up, we want to question things, we even want to question the beliefs like I did around Catholicism. It's a natural occurrence. It's a
Yeah,
natural
and it's
occurrence.
coinciding with a very big rise in sobriety, right? The sober lifestyle. Like a lot of people are rejecting alcohol right now, and it's exciting to witness and to think, okay, I'll I wonder if you do this. I'll watch a show sometimes and they'll be having all these problems, but they're drinking all the time. And I'm like, if everybody would just put the drinks down, everything's gonna be all right. Do you do that?
All
Like,
the time. So I was guiltily watched Supernatural. I don't know if you ever watched
oh yeah, I know
Supernatural
that show.
series.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Dean is always drinking. And I'm always like, I'm sitting there always wondering, I was like, I can kind of get it, right? That seems like a really, but like what would it be like if you didn't drink?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah. What would
I
it what
mean,
would your life be like?
and I'm glad you said that. Life is so much better for me not drinking. And like my intuition and just, I don't know, I just feel almost high all the time. And I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel? Just, I know you said you just get to enjoy life. How do you just feel great? Do you just feel good? I do.
I
And I kind of trip out sometimes. I'm like, I feel so good, I should have a drink. And then I'm like, no, don't do that.
I mean, that's the addict in us. Like,
Right,
we drank
right.
when we were happy, we drank when we were sad, right? Um, it's interesting. So I've thought about this. I think about this a lot, in comparison to what I was. And when I was first in recovery, I was still in therapy, and I'd gotten into therapy when I was with the abusive ex-husband.
Yeah.
And I was diagnosed with, I think it's dysthymia, which
Oh,
is low levels of anxiety and depression. Like, you're not manic depressive, you're not like generalized anxiety, but you have enough of it consistently.
I
And
had no idea there was a word for that. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. Like
yeah, there's an action.
just that
Yeah.
low level stress and anxiety. Oh my gosh. I bet
Yep.
everybody's like, what was that word? Yeah.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
was it
And
called
so
again? Just
I
timing?
think it's dysthymia. I
Just
think
timing.
that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like literally in the DSM, it's a diagnostic, yeah. And so, because I'm weird and I would always look at, what are you billing me at? Right. Um, like, oh, and so I've thought about this a lot, and I've done a lot of work on my emotions in recovery, right? Expanding my ability to be uncomfortable, to be vulnerable. I've done a lot of work on understanding anxiety and trauma and things of that nature. And it sounds so weird, but my entire life, ever since I was a kid, I chewed my nails, like gnawed my nails as an anxious habit. And just this past August, I was at a movie with my mom, and I looked down and I had nails. And I realized I don't chew my nails anymore.
Wow. Wow.
My baseline level of anxiety does not have me, you know, partaking in a nervous habit that I've had for my entire life.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
And you weren't even trying. It just
No,
happened. Yeah.
it just happened. I mean, now I have to cut them and file them all the time, but I'll take that.
Only
I
thing.
mean,
That's right.
my nervous system is level. And it's like, even when things happen that are just uncomfortable, like, because you can't say that you're happy all the time, right? Shit happens. Like,
Sure,
unfortunate
sure,
things
sure.
happen.
Yeah.
I don't find myself swept in it, right? I don't find it, like, I don't end up in this deeply sorrow-filled place. I witness. So it life, yes, I feel filled with joy, but life feels just easier.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful thing about it, right? I'm able to experience the emotions, the ups, the downs that it has, but it's easy. I don't feel like I'm being tossed in the dryer, like I'm a shoe tossed in the dryer anymore. I'm more so, just hanging out on a swing in the backyard and just slowly rocking. And sometimes I go up and sometimes I'm down, but I enjoy it the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Yes. If somebody's listening to this and they're like, I want to be on the sober witch lifestyle. I want to do this. I want to feel like that. I want to get there. What do I do first? What do you tell them?
What do you Well, you can visit the website and you can come join us in Circle.
But
That's the first thing.
that's a great way to start. What if they just want to start right now in their house and they're like, I just want something I can do right here. Well, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell you to grab a piece of pen and paper and write down why. Write down why. Why do you want that?
Yeah. Like anchor into that why. I mean, that's so true for so many things, right? Like looking at the why and getting in touch with your why and then anchoring there. And you're able to return to that when you start to get confused on all the other things, all the other possibilities or all the other options.
Well, the beautiful thing about writing too, and we do a lot of journaling, is that there becomes this way that spirit can speak through us in that we don't sometimes listen to when they're trying to talk to us in our head.
Hmm.
Right? So we can write and we can see these things come out and you're like, oh my gosh, like, wow, I didn't even think about it that way, So there just becomes this connect. Like, there's such thing as automatic writing. And so that's what I would say. Sit down and write the why. Like, don't overthink it. Just write why. Like, why do you want to step into the sober witch life? Why do you want to step into sobriety?
Yeah. Beautiful. What are your nighttime rituals?
Ah, you know, they vary. I wish it's funny. I think about this all the time as far as like my morning rituals are really lovely and anchored in, but nighttime is a more difficult ritualistic time for me. So I don't have like a lot of every single day, except I say my prayer before I fall asleep.
You do
Hmm.
that prayer that you said
Hmm.
earlier? I
Yep.
love that prayer. It's so
Yep.
good. I mean, I think that's powerful enough, like I can't remember all that sometimes, so I just try to hold love in my heart and pray for the world and say, I love myself, life loves me. I mean, self-love has been a big part of this journey for me as well, learning that. And so I have to ground into that too as I fall asleep. Has that been a part of it for you?
It is absolutely. It's the place of, so I talked about the chakras that I worked on, and then you get up
Yeah.
to the heart chakra, and that's where that self-love comes from. And that heart chakra and that solar plexus is where we start to create this connection that I'm worthy of a beautiful life,
Mm,
right? I'm
yeah.
worthy of happiness. I'm worthy of good friendship. I'm worthy of someone, to love me the way that I want to be and deserve to be, loved. Like that connection right there. So absolutely, like there is so much beautiful work that can be done for ourselves when we choose to love ourselves. Yeah.
Mhm. Incredible. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree, and thank you for sharing all that you've
Mhm.
shared. So, as we go today, as we sign off, is there anything that we missed that you really want to address, or what would you like to leave everyone with today?
It's been on my mind today, so I'll say this, and I know it's a little bit a different time when this will air. But if you're ever uncertain of what you should do in your life, like where you should be, I encourage you to anchor yourself in to the world around you, nature around you. There's something very beautiful about the seasons, about the wheel of the year and what it can teach us. And so, when we're talking about the dark of winter or the bright, beautiful warmth of summer, there's something to be learned by the nature and the world around us. So if you're ever uncertain, see what nature's doing, and that'll give you
Mm,
some answers.
I love that. I feel like so many times we're too online or we're scrolling or doing all these things, and we really do get out of touch. And just when you go for a walk, I went for a walk today, and I got like 6 ideas, and I was like, yeah. Oh, yeah, wow. So a beautiful message. Thank you. If
Yeah,
anybody
thank
does
you.
want to get into one of these circles and work with you, how can they do that?
Super simple. You just visit the website soberwitch.life.
That's
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's a great
Yeah.
website. I was like poking all around on there today, and there's all sorts of options and a lot of great intel. So I highly recommend it. And of course, all of that will be in the show notes too. So, Sunshine, I just want to say thank you so much. You're a great speaker, by the way. I could just see you like on stages talking to people. You have such a great presence and voice.
I
Really
appreciate that.
wonderful.
That is a
Yeah.
definitely something that I anticipate and look forward to being able to do.
Yeah, you have a really just easy, nice way about you. So it was a joy to talk to you today. So thank you so much. And thank you for all you
Oh,
share.
thank you.
It's really going to stick with me and in my heart. And I can't wait to incorporate that prayer.
Mm.
I love it.
I appreciate
So
you, Amy.
yeah, thank you so much. And everyone go follow Sunshine. You're at Pink Sober Witch. Is that correct?
At
On Instagram?
at Sober Witch Life. Yeah, at
Sober
Sober
Witch
Witch
Life.
Life.
Sober Witch
Yeah, if
Life.
you look for Sober Witch Life, you'll find me pretty much everywhere under that. Yeah.
Awesome. You gotta trademark that. You gotta put your little TM on that. That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. And of course, everything's in the show notes, and I encourage everyone to go follow Sunshine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, I love that. It resonated so hard with me. I love it. I mean, it really is interesting when you get down to the nuts and bolts of something like witchcraft, what it really is, right? It's prayer. It's um, tuning into spirit. It's ritual, which that's habits, yo, right? It's like that's like I mean, I do all those things. I talk about all those things. And you don't have to call yourself a witch if you don't want to. You just can be. You don't have to call yourself anything. You don't have to label yourself anything if you don't want to. You don't even have to label yourself sober. Sometimes I just think, I'm not having a drink today. And it ends up being the next day and the next day and the next day. And they all accumulate. And sometimes it's just less overwhelming that way. Sometimes you're just able to just be and be happy. You don't have to call yourself anything, or maybe you do want to call yourself something, that book I wrote was called The Trouble with Becoming a Witch. And it's really about other people having a problem with you living whatever lifestyle you want to live, right? You coming into your own identity, whatever that is. Anyway, I'm probably off on a tangent, but all I'm saying is I like it. I like it. And I've experienced a lot of that myself. It has really opened up my life in so many beautiful ways. Even just sitting here right now, I feel like my frequency is vibing up here. Just, I don't know. And I think it's the sobriety. And I think maybe that's why I used alcohol too. I think I used it as something to kind of pull me down and ground me, because otherwise I'm spinning off into space. And I have to find other ways to ground myself now, whether it's nature or, I don't know, eating chips sometimes. I think that kind of does the trick sometimes when I really need something like that. So whatever. Anyway, big thanks to Sunshine. I just loved it. Go follow Sunshine and check out the soberwitchlife.com. I believe it's .com. Let me see. I've got it written down right here. Let's see. Yes, at soberwitchlife and soberwitch.life. That's what it is. soberwitch.life. So, yeah, I love you so much. What else do we need to cover in our business end of things when we wrap up? We need to say, oh gosh, I don't have my extensions and I'm getting them back in tomorrow. I'm ready. My hair feels like I have no hair. So the Collective ATX does my hair usually. So shout to them since I'm getting them tomorrow. And I've had them out for a month. It feels weird. Podcast Magician, thank you so much. If you need some podcast editing, they are the magicians over there, right? Yeah. Connect with me if you want to at Real Amy Edwards on Instagram or amyedwards.info. Sign up for the newsletter, all those good things. Follow our new show, Anything But Mid, with my co-host Whitney Strop. Let's see. Recently, oh gosh, I don't even know. I'd have to go look at a list. My brain can't compartmentalize that right now, or uncompartmentalize, whatever. Anyway, I don't know. So connect with me sometime. I love you so much. You're a badass. You're a fucking badass. If you're thinking about getting sober, like Sunshine said, you're already on the path. And you know what? Sometimes it's just about timing. And you know what? You'll know when the time is right and when you're ready and when you're stepping into whatever that next chapter is for you. And you know what? Don't beat yourself up ever if the time isn't right for you. If you're just at a point where, I don't know, you just aren't there yet, that's just the phase you're in, and that is okay. It's part of your life and part of your learning. Totally fine. Permission, right? Give yourself permission to live in the space and the moment that you're in right now. All right. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Keep shining bright. Till next time.
Thank you so much for being here. Please rate, review, and follow us. And we'd love to hear your feedback. Keep shining bright.